All right, this is the first attempt at this, and we're going to try to be doing these fairly regularly. Um, but I just want to keep some spiritual thought, keep us centered as often as I can as we go through this little crisis. Now, some of you might be joining me from our congregation. Some of you might be watching from different places. So just to kind of we can all figure out what we're doing together here. But a lot of this will apply to you no matter. But just so you know that I'm here in Wisconsin. Groups of 10 have been outlawed, I guess, for other than emergency grocery store runs and various things like that. You can still go to some places and do some shopping or whatever. Um, some of you might be in states that have pretty more strict regulations than we have, depending on, the hot spot you're in. So, but we're all feeling this. Certainly, no matter who you are, you're feeling this. And I want to talk today, as we start, I want to talk about what God does to try to get his people where he wants them to be. And sometimes what's interesting is that he uses opposite means to get us where he wants us to be. He might use one thing with one group of people and use another thing with another group of people. I want to use two illustrations of this in the Old Testament. The two greatest generations, if you think that the two greatest generations, what are they? In the whole Old Testament, well, so far as we know, they were the group that came out of the wilderness under Joshua, and the group that returns from Babylon under Zerubbabel. And later there's Ezra and Nehemiah and all those people. But those two generations are the premier generations, and it's interesting is that God uses two completely different things. Now the generation that left, the older generation that left from Egypt, they had problems. We've preached about the problems they had, but then that other generation grows up, and God says, you know what I'm going to do to prepare you, to get you ready for Canaan, for my promised land. I'm going to have you go without for some time. You're going to go without. And they went without for 40 years. They had food and bread and water. That's what they had. Every once in a while, a little bit extra, if God was nice to them. So that's what there was. And so when they get to Canaan, they're very appreciative of what they had, and they take this land, and they were really into whatever it was that Joshua had them doing. And of course, it fell apart after a little while, and things progressed, and eventually we come up to this period of Babylon a few hundred years later, and well, that group that goes into Babylon again had some problems. In fact, Isaiah and Jeremiah both said of right before this happens, he's like, this land is polluted with idols. It's just full of idols. And so God does something different with this group of people. And of course, there's this younger generation that's growing up and seeing all of this and experiencing this firsthand. God says, tell you what, you like this so much, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you in spades. And so he says, I'm going to send you, you think you like idols, I'm going to give you idols, and you're just going to have so many idols you don't know what to do with. Well, they're sick and tired of idols. So when they come back, guess what? They didn't want anything to do with idols. So here is these, this generation comes back. In fact, there's no mention. This impacted them in such a way that there's no in the books that are written after the return from Babylon. There's no mention of idols. They didn't worship it. They had it with them. It reminds me of a story. That was told to me by a man that was very influential in my life, Barry Sanderson, in Massachusetts. He told me the story of when he was a kid, and he wanted a bag of Fritos. And so his dad said, okay, I'll get you a bag of Fritos. He said, I want the big bag of Fritos. So, okay, you can have the big bag of Fritos. I didn't want to share it with my brothers. Okay, you don't have to share it with your brothers. And Barry said, wow, this is just, you couldn't believe this. This is like heaven. Get a big bag of Fritos, not have to share it with your brothers. Well, there was a catch. Oh, his dad, Sandy Sanderson, I know quite well, he took him home, and he sat him down at the table, and he says, now eat the bag of Fritos. And he didn't let him get up till he finished every Frito in the large bag of Fritos. Well, Barry told me, at least at this time, and I assume it's probably still the same. He hasn't eaten a Frito since. Right? He had so much of it that he didn't want it. And I think we're about to get a dose of both of these things as we go through whatever time period it is. There's going to be some denials of things. Already there is. I know that, you know, fast food and some of this stuff that's just a part of our culture. A lot of us are wondering what to do. We've got all this time on our hands, and we're looking at what things did we used to do to fill our times with. What did we used to do? And again, maybe you might live in an area that's like, everything's open, or maybe you're not, and you don't have it. It's gone, and then people are starting to think about what's really important. You know, Taco Bell's not quite so important anymore. Chick-fil-A's not quite so important anymore. And whatever it is that you thought was so important, not quite so important anymore. Oh, here's one. What about sports? I'm almost as much a sportaholic as I was a junk food holic. Well, that's gone. I mean, you're scrounging trying to find something, and we sought for identity in these icons and these heroes and these idols that we have. We wanted them. And God says, well, it's gone now. What do we use and what do we fill our time with? What are we going to do to find identity and sense of purpose with all of this gone? On the other hand, some of us are going to have an overwhelming abundance now because we got time on our hands. Now, some of you might even be busier than you were before. Some of you work jobs, and if you're a nurse, you've got no shortage of time. Your schedules are just straight out filled. If you work in some of these grocery stores, or you're a delivery driver, you might have a busier schedule than ever. But some of you, and I know we know a lot of teachers who are laid off, and well, they might be doing some video things from home, but all of a sudden there's a lot of free time. Oh, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of layoffs and various things like that. Well, how are you going to be spending your time? Well, I can tell you, there's a lot of people that are pretty excited. Got some of this. I got a lot of Netflix binging to catch up on. And I know some of you younger ones. I know. Oh, maybe not just you younger ones, but some of you are like, I got some time. I've got a lot of games. I got a lot of things to do. I'm gonna fill my schedule right up. I got all these games, and I got all this, and we're about to get an abundance of what we think we really want. And I don't think it's going to take too long before we're really, really bored with what we thought we wanted. And God's going to say, is that what you really wanted? There's been a lot of sermons. There's been a lot of lessons. There's been a lot of things spent talking about all of these things, trying to encourage people not to be devoted to sports. The sports is not our God, and we've talked and we've used all these illustrations. Hasn't really caught. We've talked about social media, and we've talked about all these things that, in one way or the other, whether we're denied it or whether we got too much of it, I think we're about to realize that this is not really what we want. And hopefully we come out the other side of this. And when we're out of captivity in our basements or wherever we're at holding up, we come back and we are a little bit stronger. Bye.